A woman standing at the altar in a $20,000 dress, surrounded by 500 guests, about to marry one of the wealthiest men in the city. Everything is perfect. The flowers. The champagne. The orchestra playing softly in the background. And then the doors open. A Rolls-Royce pulls up. Not just any Rolls-Royce, but a phantom, midnight black, gleaming under the afternoon sun. The man who steps out is wearing a suit that costs more than most people's cars. But that's not what makes every head turn. It's what happens next. 3 children step out behind him. Identical. Calm. Confident. And the bride, the woman who invited this man to mock him, to parade her success in front of his failure, feels her legs go weak. Because the poor ex-husband she left behind, the man she told everyone was going nowhere, just walked into her wedding looking like he owns the world. And those children? They have her eyes. This is not a fairy tale. This is not fiction. This is a true story about pride, patience, and the moment everything you thought you knew gets turned completely upside down. Stay with me, because what unfolds next will challenge everything you believe about success, revenge, and the price we pay for underestimating people. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. And also drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Are you in New York? South Africa? US? London? Manila? We want to know who's part of this community. Now, let's get into how this all began. Because the wedding day was just the culmination. The real story started 7 years earlier, in a small apartment where 2 people made promises they couldn't keep. Marcus Bennett was 26 when he married Claire Anderson. She was 24. They met at a coffee shop where Marcus worked part-time while finishing his master's degree in computer science. Claire was a marketing assistant at a mid-sized firm, ambitious and restless, always talking about the life she was going to build. Marcus was quieter. He was the kind of man who thought before he spoke, who observed before he acted. Some people mistook his silence for weakness. Claire, in the beginning, found it comforting. She would talk about her dreams, her frustrations, her plans to climb higher, and Marcus would listen. Really listen. Not just waiting for his turn to speak, but absorbing every word like it mattered. And to him, it did. Because he loved her completely. Their wedding was small. 30 people in a community center with folding chairs and homemade decorations. Claire's mother cried, but not from joy. She cried because she thought her daughter was settling. "You could do better," she whispered when Claire was getting ready. "You're beautiful. You're smart. Why are you marrying a man who works in a coffee shop?" Claire defended him then. "He's getting his degree, Mom. He's going to be something. You'll see." But even as she said it, doubt had already planted its seed. Because Claire measured success in visible things. The car you drive. The house you live in. The restaurants you can afford without checking the menu prices. And Marcus, with his second-hand clothes and his bus pass and his homemade lunches, didn't fit the picture she'd been painting in her mind since she was a teenager. The first year was manageable. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where car alarms went off at night and the elevator only worked half the time. Marcus graduated and got a job as a junior developer at a small tech company. The pay wasn't great, but it was a start. Claire kept working, kept climbing, kept looking at other couples and wondering why their progress felt so slow. Her friend Jessica married a lawyer. Her cousin Monica married a doctor. And Claire? Claire was clipping coupons and buying generic brands and watching Marcus come home exhausted from coding all day, too tired to even talk about her day. The resentment started quietly. A sigh here. A sharp comment there. "Are you really going to wear that to dinner? Do you ever think about making more money? I saw Jessica's new car today. Must be nice." Marcus noticed. How could he not? But he didn't know how to fix it. He was working as hard as he could. He was learning, growing, building skills that he believed would pay off eventually. But eventually wasn't fast enough for Claire. By the second year, the argument started. Not screaming matches, but something worse. Cold, cutting conversations where Claire would list everything they didn't have. Everything she wanted. Everything his paycheck couldn't provide. "I'm not asking for a mansion," she'd say. "I'm just asking for a life that doesn't feel like we're constantly struggling." And Marcus would respond the only way he knew how. "I'm trying, Claire. I promise I'm trying. But promises don't pay rent. Promises don't buy the kind of life Claire saw on social media every single day." The breaking point came in year 3. Claire met Jonathan Pierce at a work conference. He was everything Marcus wasn't. Tall, confident, successful. He owned a chain of luxury car dealerships and had investments in real estate across 3 states. When he talked, people listened. When he walked into a room, he owned it. And when he showed interest in Claire, she didn't resist. At first, it was just conversations. Then coffee meetings. Then dinners that ran late. She told herself it was networking. Professional connections. But she knew the truth. She was auditioning for a different life. And Jonathan was offering her the lead role. The night Claire told Marcus she wanted a divorce, it was raining. One of those heavy, relentless rains that floods the streets and makes the whole world feel like it's drowning. Marcus came home from work soaked because the bus had broken down and he'd walked the last mile. He was looking forward to a hot shower and maybe watching a movie with Claire, something they hadn't done in months. But when he walked in, she was sitting at the kitchen table with papers in front of her. Divorce papers. Already filled out. Already signed on her side. "I can't do this anymore," she said without looking at him. Marcus stood there, water dripping from his jacket onto the floor, and felt something inside him crack. "Can't do what?" he asked quietly. "This," she gestured around the apartment. "This life. This constant struggle. I'm tired, Marcus. I'm tired of being the woman who has to explain why we can't afford things. I'm tired of watching everyone else move forward while we stay stuck." Marcus sat down slowly. "I'm working on it, Claire. The company is talking about promoting me. I've been taking extra projects. I just need a little more time." She shook her head. "That's what you always say. More time. But time doesn't stop, Marcus. My life doesn't stop. I'm 27 years old and I feel like I'm 50 because I'm so stressed about money all the time." He wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her that stress was temporary, that they were building something, that success doesn't happen overnight. But he looked at her face and saw that she'd already left. Mentally. Emotionally. She was just waiting for her body to follow. "There's someone else, isn't there?" he asked. Claire flinched. "That's not what this is about. But there is someone." She didn't deny it. "I met someone who can give me the life I deserve. And before you say anything, this isn't about betrayal. This is about survival. I'm drowning here, Marcus. And you can't save me because you're drowning too." The words hit him like physical blows. "You're drowning too." As if his struggle made him less than. As if working hard with little return was a character flaw instead of a phase. He looked at the papers. Looked at her. And made a decision that surprised even himself. "Okay," he said. "If this is what you want, I won't fight you." Claire looked up, surprised. She'd expected begging. Expected tears. Expected him to fall apart. But Marcus just stood up, walked to the bedroom, and started packing a bag. He signed the papers that night. Didn't ask for anything. Didn't want anything except to be away from the person who measured his worth in dollar signs. He stayed with a friend from college, sleeping on a couch that was too short for his frame, going to work every day like his world hadn't just imploded. What Marcus didn't know, what Claire herself didn't realize for another 3 weeks, was that she was pregnant. By the time she took the test, Marcus had already moved out completely. She stared at the 2 pink lines and felt panic rise in her chest. This wasn't part of the plan. Jonathan didn't know she'd been married. Didn't know about Marcus. She'd told him she was single, unattached, ready for something new. A pregnancy from her previous relationship would complicate everything. So Claire made a choice. She wouldn't tell Marcus. Wouldn't tell anyone. She scheduled an appointment to discuss her options, went to the clinic for an ultrasound, and that's when the technician said the words that changed everything. "Congratulations. You're having triplets." Triplets. Not 1 baby. 3. Claire sat in that exam room and felt the walls close in. 3 children. She couldn't hide that. Couldn't explain that away. But she also couldn't face it. Not with Marcus. Not with Jonathan. Not with anyone. So she did what fear makes people do. She ran. She told her job she needed a leave of absence for a family emergency. Told Jonathan she had to go care for her sick aunt in another state. Told her mother she needed space to figure things out. And she disappeared for 7 months. Found a small town 4 hours away where nobody knew her name. Rented a room in a boarding house. Worked remotely when she could. And waited. The pregnancy was difficult. Carrying 3 babies put immense strain on her body. She was constantly exhausted, constantly uncomfortable, constantly terrified. There were moments, alone in that rented room, when she thought about calling Marcus. Thought about telling him the truth. But pride stopped her every time. She'd already painted him as the failure in their marriage. Already told people she'd upgraded. How would it look if she came crawling back now, pregnant and desperate? So she stayed silent. And when the triplets were born prematurely at 32 weeks, when she held 3 tiny, fragile babies in the NICU, when the medical bills started piling up and she realized she couldn't do this alone, even then, she didn't call Marcus. Instead, she made a decision that would haunt her for years. She gave the babies up for adoption. But here's what Claire didn't know. Here's the part that makes this story remarkable. The adoption agency she used had protocols. They tried to contact the father. They had to legally. And when they searched for Marcus Bennett, they found him. 3 months after Claire had given birth, Marcus received a phone call that shattered and rebuilt his entire world in the same breath. "Mr. Bennett, we're calling regarding 3 infants that were placed for adoption. The mother listed you as the biological father. We need to verify paternity and discuss your rights." Marcus couldn't breathe. 3 infants. I don't understand. Who is the mother? When they told him it was Claire, when they explained she'd given birth to triplets and relinquished them, when they asked if he wanted to pursue custody, Marcus didn't hesitate. "Yes. I want my children." The paternity test confirmed what he already knew in his heart. They were his. Emma, Ethan, and Liam. 3 perfect, tiny humans who existed because of a love that had failed but created something that wouldn't. The adoption agency explained the situation. Claire had signed away her rights. She couldn't be contacted without her permission. But Marcus, as the biological father, could take custody if he proved he could care for them. Single father. Modest income. Small apartment. Under normal circumstances, it would be an uphill battle. But there was something about the way Marcus spoke, the determination in his eyes, the absolute certainty that these children were his responsibility, that convinced the social worker to take a chance. "You'll need to meet certain requirements," she told him. "Stable housing. Steady income. Support system. Can you do that?" Marcus looked at the 3 babies sleeping in the hospital nursery. "I'll do whatever it takes." The next 6 months were the hardest of Marcus's life. He moved to a 2-bedroom apartment that stretched his budget to breaking point. He worked his day job, then picked up freelance coding projects at night, working after the babies fell asleep. He learned how to change diapers, mix formula, soothe crying infants at 3 in the morning. He learned that sleep is a luxury and coffee is survival. He learned that you can be exhausted beyond measure and still find the strength to get up when a baby cries. Because love isn't a feeling when you're that tired. Love is a decision. A choice you make every single morning to show up. And Marcus showed up. Every single day. His friend Tyler, the one who'd let him crash on his couch during the divorce, became his lifeline. Tyler helped with childcare when Marcus had important meetings. Brought groceries when money was tight. Sat with Marcus on particularly hard nights and reminded him that he wasn't alone. "Man, what you're doing," Tyler said one night, watching Marcus feed 3 babies in assembly line fashion, "most people wouldn't even attempt it." Marcus smiled tiredly. Most people didn't get this particular gift. These kids didn't ask to be born. Didn't ask for their mother to walk away. They deserve someone who chooses them. I'm honored to be that person. By the time the triplets were 1 year old, Marcus had established a routine. Wake up at 5. Prepare bottles. Feed the babies. Change diapers. Play with them for an hour. Put them down for their morning nap. Work from home, headphones on, jumping up whenever someone cried. Lunch. Afternoon nap. More work. Dinner. Bath time. Bedtime. Then freelance work until midnight. Sleep. Repeat. It was exhausting. It was isolating. It was the best thing that ever happened to him. Because in taking care of those children, Marcus found purpose that had nothing to do with salary or status. He found meaning in small moments. Emma's first smile. Ethan's first word. Liam's first steps. These weren't items on a resume. They were the substance of life. The freelance work started paying off in unexpected ways. One of Marcus's clients, a startup founder named David Chen, was impressed with his coding skills and work ethic. "I need someone like you on my team," David said during a video call. "I'm launching a new platform and I need a senior developer who actually understands the product." Interested? Marcus hesitated. "I have 3 young children. I need flexible hours." David didn't flinch. "Work from home. Set your own schedule. Just deliver quality work and we're good." The offer came with double Marcus's current salary. He accepted immediately. That job became the turning point. Not just financially, but professionally. Marcus wasn't just coding anymore. He was problem-solving. Innovating. Building something that mattered. And David noticed. Within a year, David made Marcus a partner in the company. "You've earned it," he said. "Your work is exceptional and your dedication is unmatched. I want you invested in this company's success because you're a huge part of it." The partnership came with equity. With profit sharing. With a salary that meant Marcus could finally breathe. He moved the family to a better neighborhood. Enrolled the kids in a good preschool. Started saving money for the first time in his life. But success didn't change his core values. He still drove a modest car. Still lived below his means. Still taught the children that character matters more than possessions. Because Marcus remembered what it felt like to be judged for having little. And he never wanted his children to judge others the same way. The triplets grew up knowing they were different from other families. They had a father, but no mother. They had each other, but no siblings from separate births. People asked questions. Teachers. Other parents. Kids at school. "Where's your mom?" It was Emma who asked Marcus directly when they were 5 years old. They were having breakfast, the three of them sitting at the kitchen table while Marcus made pancakes. "Daddy, why don't we have a mommy?" Marcus turned off the stove. Sat down. Looked at three pairs of eyes that deserved honesty. "You do have a mother," he said carefully. "Every person does. But sometimes adults make choices that don't include staying. Your mother made a choice to not be part of our family. That doesn't mean she didn't love you. It means she wasn't ready to be what you needed." Ethan, always the analytical one, frowned. "Did she not want us?" The question broke Marcus's heart. "I think she was scared. Sometimes people are scared of responsibility. Scared of sacrifice. It doesn't make her bad. It makes her human." Liam, the quiet observer, asked the question that mattered most. "Are you going to leave too?" Marcus reached across the table and held three small hands. "Never. I will never leave you. I chose you from the moment I knew you existed. You are my purpose. My joy. My reason for everything. And nothing will ever change that." It was a promise he kept every single day. As the children grew, their personalities became distinct. Emma was the nurturer. She looked out for her brothers, reminded them of homework, made sure everyone had lunch packed. She had her mother's organizational skills without her impatience. Ethan was the thinker. He asked endless questions, read everything he could find, wanted to understand how things worked. He had Marcus's analytical mind and his quiet intensity. Liam was the artist. He noticed things others missed. The way light hit the window. The sound of rain on the roof. The feeling of a moment. He processed the world through observation and expressed it through drawing. Marcus encouraged all of it. Bought Emma science kits and let her organize the household schedule. Bought Ethan books on everything from astronomy to zoology. Bought Liam art supplies and hung his drawings all over the house. He went to every school event, every parent-teacher conference, every talent show. He was the dad cheering loudest in the audience, filming everything on his phone, embarrassing his kids in the best possible way. But he also taught them about hardship. About resilience. He didn't hide his past. Didn't pretend life had always been easy. He told them about the divorce. About the struggle. About the nights he wasn't sure how he'd pay rent. Life will knock you down, he told them. The measure of a person isn't whether they fall. It's whether they get back up. The business continued to grow. Marcus and David expanded their platform, securing contracts with major companies. Marcus's equity in the company became valuable. Not just comfortable money, but generational wealth. He could have retired. Could have relaxed. But he kept working because the work mattered. He was building educational software that helped underprivileged kids access learning tools. Every line of code was making a difference. That sense of purpose, of contribution beyond himself, kept him driven. By the time the triplets were 10, Marcus had become someone he'd never imagined during those dark divorce days. Not because of the money. But because of the man he'd chosen to become when everything fell apart. He started taking the kids on trips. Not extravagant vacations, but meaningful experiences. They volunteered at homeless shelters, teaching them gratitude. They visited museums, feeding their curiosity. They went camping, teaching them self-reliance. Marcus wanted them to understand that privilege comes with responsibility. That having more means giving more. That success without service is just selfishness. The lesson stuck. Emma started a food drive at school. Ethan tutored younger students in math. Liam created art for charity auctions. They weren't perfect children. They argued, they complained about chores, they tested boundaries like all kids do. But they were good humans. Kind. Thoughtful. Grounded. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. Because what happens next, the moment these two worlds collide, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about karma, about patience, about the long game of life. Don't go anywhere. The wedding is coming. And nothing will prepare you for how this unfolds. While Marcus was building a life of purpose, Claire was building a life of appearance. After giving up the babies, she returned to her life with Jonathan. Told him she'd been caring for her sick aunt, who'd thankfully recovered. He believed her. Why wouldn't he? Claire had always been convincing. They dated for another year before he proposed. The ring was 6 carats. The proposal was at a 5-star restaurant with a violinist playing in the background. It was everything Claire had imagined when she was lying in that cramped apartment with Marcus, dreaming of more. She said yes without hesitation. The wedding planning consumed a full year. Claire wanted everything perfect. The venue, a historic mansion with gardens that looked like something from a movie. The dress, custom designed by a couturier who dressed celebrities. The guest list, 500 people including business executives, socialites, and people Claire barely knew but wanted to impress. Jonathan paid for everything without complaint. This was his 3rd marriage, and he'd learned that happy wife means happy life. If Claire wanted extravagance, he'd give her extravagance. The budget climbed past $300,000. The flowers alone cost $20,000. It was excessive. It was unnecessary. It was exactly what Claire thought she needed to prove she'd made the right choice. But something was hollow. Claire wouldn't admit it, even to herself, but in quiet moments she felt it. A sense that she was performing rather than living. She'd scroll through social media, posting carefully curated photos of her life. The designer handbags. The exotic vacations. The luxury car. And people would comment with envy, with congratulations, with admiration. But none of it filled the emptiness that had started growing the day she signed those adoption papers. She told herself it was just nerves. Wedding jitters. Cold feet that every bride experiences. But deep down, she knew it was something else. It was the knowledge that she traded authenticity for comfort. That every material thing in her life came with the price tag of pretending she had no past. Jonathan knew nothing about Marcus. Claire had told him she'd never been married, never been serious with anyone. It was easier that way. No complicated history. No awkward questions. Just a clean slate with a successful man who could provide the lifestyle she craved. Her mother knew the truth, but she'd been instructed to never mention it. That part of your life is over, Claire told her firmly. Marcus was a mistake I've corrected. I don't want Jonathan to think I'm damaged goods. Her mother had protested weakly. But what about the babies? Don't you ever wonder? Claire's face had gone cold. They're better off without me. I gave them a chance at a good life with people who were ready. That's all there is to say about it. But of course, it wasn't all there was to say. The guilt visited her at unexpected moments. When she saw mothers with children at the grocery store. When friends announced pregnancies. When she passed by baby clothes in department stores. She'd feel a physical ache in her chest, a ghost pain for something she'd released before she could even hold it properly. She started having dreams. 3 babies crying. 3 pairs of eyes looking at her with silent accusation. She'd wake up sweating, heart pounding, and tell herself it was just stress. Just the wedding pressure. Just normal anxiety. But the dreams persisted. 2 months before the wedding, Claire made a decision that she'd later recognize as self-sabotage, though at the time she told herself it was closure. She was going through old emails, cleaning out her inbox, when she came across Marcus's last known email address. On impulse, she looked him up on social media. Found nothing. He wasn't on any platform. No Facebook. No Instagram. No LinkedIn. It was like he'd vanished. She told herself that confirmed what she'd always known. He was still struggling, still going nowhere, probably bitter and broken. The thought should have made her feel vindicated. Instead, it made her feel sad. Then she had an idea. A terrible, cruel idea that she convinced herself was generous. She'd invite Marcus to the wedding. She'd show him, in person, what she'd become. The life she was living. The man she was marrying. It would be closure for both of them. He'd see she'd moved on, moved up, and maybe he could finally let go of any lingering feelings. She didn't examine her real motivation. Didn't want to admit that she wanted him to feel small. Wanted him to see what he'd lost. Wanted to win in a competition he didn't even know they were having. So she hired a private investigator to find his current address. It took 3 weeks, but they found him. Living in a nice neighborhood. Working for some tech company. Single father, the report said, which confused Claire because she'd never told Marcus about the pregnancy. How could he be a father? She dismissed it. Maybe he'd adopted. Maybe he'd remarried and divorced again. It didn't matter. She had his address. She sent the invitation with a handwritten note. Marcus, I hope this finds you well. I wanted you to know I'm getting married. Despite our past, I'd like you to be there to celebrate this new chapter. It would mean a lot. Best, Claire. It was passive-aggressive wrapped in false kindness. And she knew it. But she sent it anyway. When Marcus received the invitation, he stared at it for a long time. The triplets were at school. He was working from home, taking a break between meetings, and there it was in the mail. Heavy cardstock. Embossed lettering. Claire Anderson and Jonathan Pierce request the honor of your presence. He read the handwritten note twice. Felt a mixture of emotions he couldn't quite name. Anger? No, that had faded years ago. Sadness? Maybe a little. Mostly, he felt curious. Why would Claire want him there? They hadn't spoken in 7 years. Hadn't had any contact since the divorce. This wasn't an olive branch. This was something else. He showed the invitation to Tyler that evening. Tyler read it and immediately understood. She wants to rub it in your face. Look at what I have now. Look at what you couldn't give me. That's what this is. Marcus nodded slowly. Probably. So you're not going, right? Why give her the satisfaction? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised both of them. The kids have been asking about their mother. Emma especially. She wants to know what Claire looks like. What kind of person she is. Maybe this is an opportunity. Tyler looked at him like he'd lost his mind. You want to take your children to your ex-wife's wedding? The ex-wife who abandoned them? Marcus shook his head. Not abandoned. She didn't know I have them. She gave them up for adoption. It's different. It's not different. She chose not to be their mother. And now you're going to show up at her wedding with living proof of what she walked away from. Marcus smiled, and there was something in that smile that was almost sad. I'm not going for revenge, Tyler. I'm going because my children deserve to see where they came from. And maybe, just maybe, Claire deserves to see what she missed. Tyler didn't agree, but he understood. Marcus had always been the kind of man who chose the harder right over the easier wrong. So Tyler helped him plan it. If Marcus was going to do this, he was going to do it right. Marcus told the children about the invitation that night at dinner. I received something interesting today, he said, placing the invitation on the table. It's from your mother. 3 heads snapped up. Emma reached for it first. She's getting married. Marcus nodded. And she invited me. Which means, if you want to, I can bring you with me. You could meet her. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Ethan spoke. Does she know about us? Marcus shook his head. No. She doesn't. Liam frowned. So what happens when she sees us? Marcus took a breath. I honestly don't know. But I want you three to decide. This is your choice. If you want to meet her, we'll go. If you'd rather not, we'll decline, and that's perfectly okay. The children looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that siblings have. Emma spoke for all of them. We want to go. We want to see her. Marcus nodded. Okay then. We'll go. That night, after the kids went to bed, Marcus sat in his home office and thought about logistics. If he was going to walk into Claire's world, he wasn't going to do it halfway. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. He'd worked hard. Built something real. And if Claire wanted to measure success by external markers, he'd show her that those markers had never been the point, but he had them anyway. He made some phone calls. Called in some favors. And started planning an entrance that would be respectful, dignified, and undeniably impactful. The weeks leading up to the wedding were interesting. Marcus didn't tell the children what he was planning. Just said they'd be attending a fancy event and needed nice clothes. He took them shopping, let them pick out outfits that made them feel confident. Emma chose a navy blue dress with white flowers. Ethan chose a gray suit that made him look like a miniature businessman. Liam chose black pants and a white shirt with a bow tie. They were excited. Nervous. Curious. Marcus watched them try on clothes and felt a fierce protective pride. These were good kids. No matter what happened at that wedding, they'd handle it with grace because that's how he'd raised them. Tyler asked him one more time if he was sure. This could go badly, man. What if she reacts poorly? What if she causes a scene? Marcus had considered this. Then she causes a scene. But I'm not going there to hurt her. I'm going there to close a chapter. For me and for my kids. Whatever happens, happens. He'd rented a Rolls-Royce Phantom for the day. Not because he owned one, though he could afford to. But because symbols matter, and this particular symbol would communicate something Claire would understand. Success. Achievement. Status. All the things she'd accused him of lacking. The night before the wedding, Marcus sat down with the triplets and had a serious conversation. Tomorrow might be overwhelming, he told them. Your mother doesn't know you exist. When she sees you, she's going to be shocked. She might be upset. She might be confused. None of that is your fault. None of that is about you. It's about choices she made a long time ago. I need you to remember that no matter how she reacts, you are wanted. You are loved. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. Emma asked the question he'd been expecting. What if she doesn't want to know us? Marcus pulled her close. Then that's her loss. But you'll be okay. Because you have me. You have each other. And you have a whole community of people who love you. The morning of the wedding, Marcus woke up early. Made breakfast. Got the kids dressed. Checked every detail twice. The Rolls-Royce arrived at 10. The driver was professional, discreet. Marcus had explained the situation, and the man had simply nodded. I've driven for a lot of important events, he said. This one sounds more important than most. The drive to the venue took 40 minutes. Marcus used the time to breathe. To center himself. To remind himself why he was doing this. Not for revenge. Not to hurt Claire. But to give his children the opportunity to understand where they came from. And maybe, just maybe, to give Claire the opportunity to see what grace looks like. The venue was exactly what Marcus expected. Excessive. Beautiful. Designed to impress. There were valet attendants in matching uniforms. A red carpet leading to the entrance. Ice sculptures. A string quartet. Everything screamed money and careful planning. The Rolls-Royce pulled up behind a line of luxury cars. Mercedes, BMWs, Bentleys. But the Phantom stood out. It was larger, more imposing, more quietly powerful. People turned to look. The valet opened the door. Marcus stepped out first. He'd chosen a charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, understated but clearly expensive. He looked successful without trying too hard. Then Emma stepped out. Then Ethan. Then Liam. The whispers started immediately. Who is that? Are those triplets? They look identical. Marcus placed a hand on each child's shoulder and walked toward the entrance. The greeter checked the invitation, saw Marcus's name, and waved them through. The ceremony hadn't started yet. Guests were mingling in the garden, drinking champagne, admiring the flowers. Marcus found seats in the third row, right side. Close enough to be seen. Far enough to not be intrusive. The children sat quietly, taking in everything. The opulence. The grandeur. The wealth on display. Ethan whispered, "This is where Mom wanted to be." Marcus nodded. This is what she thought would make her happy. People kept glancing at them. Trying to figure out who they were. Why they stood out. It wasn't just the triplets, though that was unusual. It was the way Marcus carried himself. Calm. Confident. Unbothered by the wealth around him because he understood something these people didn't. That money is a tool, not identity. That status is borrowed, but character is owned. That all of this, the flowers and the ice sculptures and the designer clothes, would be forgotten in a week. But how you treat people lasts forever. Then the music changed. The processional began. The wedding party walked down the aisle. Bridesmaids in blush pink dresses. Groomsmen in black tuxedos. Everyone stood. Marcus stood. The children stood. And then Claire appeared. She looked beautiful. Marcus would give her that. The dress was stunning. Her hair and makeup flawless. She was smiling, radiant, walking toward her future with confidence. She made it halfway down the aisle before she saw him. Her eyes scanned the crowd, probably looking for familiar faces, and then they landed on Marcus. Her step faltered. Claire's mind went blank for a moment. Marcus. Here. At her wedding. She'd expected him to come, of course. That was the entire point of the invitation. But she hadn't expected him to look like that. The suit. The confidence. The way he stood there without a trace of the defeated man she'd left behind. She forced herself to keep walking, to keep smiling, but her heart was hammering. And then she saw the children. 3 of them. Standing beside Marcus. And even from a distance, even through the haze of shock, she recognized something in their faces. The shape of their eyes. The curve of their chins. No. It couldn't be. Her legs felt weak but she kept moving, muscle memory carrying her forward when her mind had completely short-circuited. Jonathan noticed her hesitation. He leaned down and whispered, "You okay?" She nodded mechanically, unable to form words. They reached the altar. Claire turned to face the audience for the processional tradition, and that's when she got a clear view. The 3 children were staring at her. Not with hostility. Not with anger. Just with open curiosity. They looked about 12 years old. Maybe 13. The timeline crashed into her consciousness like a freight train. 7 years since the divorce. She'd given birth shortly after. These children were the right age. But how? She'd given them up for adoption. The agency had promised they'd go to a good family. They'd said the father hadn't been located. They'd lied. Or she'd been lied to. Or Marcus had somehow found them. The ceremony began but Claire heard nothing. The officiant was speaking, but the words were just noise. She was supposed to be experiencing the happiest moment of her life. Instead, she was having an out-of-body experience, watching herself go through motions while her mind raced through impossible calculations. Those were her children. Standing right there. Being raised by the man she'd dismissed as a failure. The man she'd invited here to humiliate. The irony was so sharp it felt like physical pain. She glanced at her mother in the front row. Her mother was staring at the children too, face pale, and in that moment Claire knew. Her mother recognized them as well. The Bennett genes were strong. The children looked like a perfect blend of her and Marcus, impossible to deny. Jonathan was saying his vows. Claire realized she'd missed her cue. The officiant prompted her gently. Claire. She blinked, refocused, and stumbled through the words she'd memorized. Words about love and commitment and forever. Words that felt hollow in her mouth because all she could think about was the 3 lives she'd created and abandoned, now sitting in her wedding ceremony like living ghosts of the past she'd tried to bury. When it came time to say, "I do," she hesitated for just a fraction of a second too long. Long enough that people noticed. Long enough that Jonathan's eyes narrowed slightly. But she said it. "I do." And the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. The recessional should have been triumphant. Claire and Jonathan walking back down the aisle as a married couple, everyone applauding, music swelling. But as they passed the 3rd row, Claire's eyes locked with Marcus's for the first time in 7 years. He nodded once. A simple acknowledgement. No malice in his expression. No satisfaction. Just a quiet recognition that said, "We both know what just happened here." And then his gaze moved to the children and softened in a way that made Claire's chest constrict. That was love. Pure, uncomplicated, paternal love. The kind of love she'd never given them. The kind of love she'd assumed they'd never receive because Marcus couldn't even take care of himself. Except clearly, he could. Clearly, he had. The cocktail hour was torture. Claire was supposed to be taking photos with Jonathan and the wedding party, but she kept looking toward the garden where guests were mingling. She couldn't see Marcus or the children. Where had they gone? Had they left? Part of her hoped they had. Part of her desperately needed to talk to them. Jonathan noticed her distraction. "What's going on with you? You've been off since we started walking down the aisle." Claire forced a smile. "Just overwhelmed. It's a big day." He studied her face, unconvinced but willing to let it go for now. "Well, try to be present. We've got 300 people here who came to celebrate with us." The photographer positioned them for formal portraits. Claire smiled on command, tilted her head, held Jonathan's hand, all while her mind was screaming. She needed to find her mother. Needed to figure out what to do. Needed to understand how this had happened. Between photo sessions, she pulled her mother aside. "Did you see them?" Her mother's face was strained. "How could I not?" "Claire, those are your children. What are they doing here? What is Marcus doing here?" Claire's voice came out sharp with panic. "I invited him, okay? I wanted him to see how well I'd done. I didn't know he had the children. I didn't know he even knew about them. The adoption agency said they couldn't locate the father." Her mother's expression shifted from shock to disappointment. "You invited your ex-husband to your wedding to make him feel bad about himself? Claire, what is wrong with you?" The words hit like a slap. Claire felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. "I need to talk to him. I need to understand what happened." Her mother shook her head. "You need to get through this reception without causing a scene. Jonathan doesn't even know you were married before, does he?" Claire's silence was answer enough. "Dear God, Claire. What have you built your new life on? Lies and omission? That's not a foundation. That's a trap waiting to spring." Claire returned to Jonathan's side for the grand entrance into the reception. The DJ announced them. For the first time as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Jonathan Pierce. Everyone applauded. They walked to the center of the room for their first dance. The song was something romantic and meaningless. Claire moved through the choreography they'd practiced, but she was scanning the room over Jonathan's shoulder. There. At a table near the back. Marcus and the 3 children. They were talking quietly among themselves. Not eating yet. Not drinking. Just sitting there like a family unit that somehow seemed more solid than anything Claire had built in the past 7 years. The first dance ended. The father-daughter dance was next. Claire's father had passed away when she was young, so they'd planned to skip this tradition. But as the DJ prepared to move on, Claire saw Marcus lean down and whisper something to the little girl. Emma, Claire would later learn her name was. Emma nodded, stood up, and walked onto the dance floor. Alone. The music started. It was a song about fathers and daughters. And Emma began to dance by herself, gracefully, unself-consciously, as if she was dancing with someone only she could see. The room went quiet. People were confused. What was happening? Who was this child? Then Marcus stood and joined her. Not making a scene. Not calling attention. Just quietly walking onto the floor and taking his daughter's hand. Finishing the dance with her the way a father should. The way he'd probably done 100 times in their kitchen at home. Claire watched, frozen in her seat, as the man she dismissed as inadequate showed everyone in that room what real love looked like. When the song ended, Marcus and Emma returned to their table. There was a smattering of uncertain applause. People were whispering now, openly curious. And Claire knew. The secret was about to explode. It was only a matter of time. Claire made it through dinner on autopilot. The speeches were happening. Jonathan's best man told jokes about their golf games and business deals. Claire's maid of honor told stories about shopping trips and girls' nights. Everything was surface level. Everything was about the life Claire had curated for public consumption. And all she could think about was the table in the back where 3 children she'd given birth to were eating wedding cake and probably wondering why their mother looked at them like they were ghosts. Finally, during a break in the program, Claire excused herself. Told Jonathan she needed to use the restroom. Instead, she walked directly to Marcus's table. The children saw her coming first. They sat up straighter, exchanged glances. Marcus followed their gaze and stood as she approached. Always the gentleman. Always respectful. It made her want to scream. Claire, he said quietly. Congratulations on your marriage. She ignored the pleasantry. We need to talk. Now. He glanced at the children. I don't think that's a good idea right now. I don't care what you think is a good idea. Those are my children and you brought them to my wedding without telling me they existed. You owe me an explanation. The words came out louder than she intended. People at nearby tables turned to look. Marcus's expression hardened slightly. Your children. With all due respect, Claire, you gave up that title 7 years ago. And I brought them because you invited me. You wanted me to see your new life. Well, I wanted them to see where they came from. Seems fair. Claire felt her control slipping. You had no right. I gave them up for adoption. How did you even get them? Ethan, the analytical one, spoke up. He's our father. The adoption agency contacted him for paternity testing. He chose us when you didn't. The words were matter of fact, without obvious malice, but they landed like a knife between Claire's ribs. She looked at the 3 children properly for the first time. Saw Marcus's steady eyes looking back at her from 3 different faces. Saw her own features blended in. The nose she'd inherited from her grandmother on Emma. The slight dimple in Ethan's left cheek that matched hers. Liam's artistic hands, long fingers that she recognized from her own reflection. They were hers. But they weren't. They belonged to themselves and to the father who'd raised them. I need to explain, she started, but Liam cut her off. You don't owe us anything. We just wanted to see you. To know where we came from. Dad always said you weren't ready and that was okay. We're okay. The simple grace of that statement broke something in Claire. Tears started falling before she could stop them. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I was scared and selfish and I made the wrong choice. Marcus's voice was gentler now. Claire, this isn't the time or place. You're getting married. You have a new husband who doesn't even know about us. Maybe we should leave. She shook her head frantically. No. Don't leave. I need to talk to you. I need to understand what happened. How you found them. How you raised them. I need to know everything. But it was too late for privacy. Jonathan was walking toward them, his expression concerned and confused. Claire. What's going on? Who are these people? Claire turned to face him, makeup streaking down her face, and knew there was no way out but through. Jonathan, this is Marcus. My ex-husband. Jonathan's face went blank. You're what? You told me you'd never been married. Claire's voice cracked. I lied. We were married for 3 years. We divorced 7 years ago. And these, she gestured to the children, are my biological children. Our biological children. I gave them up for adoption after we separated. I didn't know Marcus had custody of them until today. The silence that followed was deafening. Jonathan stared at her like she was a stranger. Which, in many ways, she was. He'd married someone who'd constructed an entire false history. Someone who'd erased inconvenient truths. Someone who'd invited her ex-husband to their wedding as some kind of twisted power play and ended up exposing her own lies. You brought your ex-husband to our wedding. His voice was cold. Controlled. Angry. And he brought your children. Children you never mentioned. Children you abandoned. Claire reached for him but he stepped back. Don't. Don't touch me right now. The reception had gone quiet. 500 people watching a marriage implode on its wedding day. Jonathan looked at Marcus. Did you know? Did you come here to blow up my wedding? Marcus shook his head. I came because I was invited. I brought my children because they wanted to meet their biological mother. I didn't know Claire hadn't told you about any of this. That's between you and her. Jonathan laughed bitterly. Your children. Right. Because she gave them to you and ran away. He turned back to Claire. What else have you lied about? What else don't I know? Claire couldn't answer. Because the truth was, their entire relationship was built on omissions. She'd lied about her past. Lied about being married before. Lied about the pregnancy. Lied about why she'd taken that 7-month leave of absence years ago. She'd constructed a version of herself that was palatable, marketable, worthy of a man like Jonathan. And now that construction was collapsing in real time. Jonathan pulled off his wedding ring. Set it on the table. I can't do this. I married someone I don't even know. He walked away, out of the reception hall, leaving Claire standing there in her $20,000 dress, surrounded by 500 witnesses to her humiliation. The guests began murmuring. Some stood to leave. Others pulled out phones, already texting about the drama. Claire's maid of honor approached cautiously. Claire, honey, maybe you should go somewhere private. But Claire couldn't move. She was rooted to the spot, staring at the wedding ring on the table. The symbol of a marriage that had lasted less than 6 hours. She'd wanted Marcus to feel small. Instead, she'd demolished her own life. Marcus touched her elbow gently. Claire. Come on. Let's get you out of here. She looked at him with something like wonder. Why are you being nice to me? I tried to humiliate you. He met her eyes steadily. Because you're the mother of my children. And because I know what it's like to have your world fall apart in public. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. He guided her to a private room off the main hall. The children followed quietly. Once inside, away from the staring crowd, Claire collapsed into a chair. I've ruined everything, she said. My marriage. My reputation. Everything. Emma, surprising everyone, knelt beside her. You didn't ruin everything. You just told the truth. That's not ruin. That's freedom. Claire looked at this 12-year-old child who was wiser than she'd ever been and felt shame wash over her. You shouldn't be comforting me. I gave you away. I didn't want you. Emma's face was sad but not angry. You didn't want the responsibility. That's different. And honestly, I'm glad. Because Dad wanted us. And we got to grow up with someone who chose us every single day. That's better than growing up with someone who felt trapped. The maturity in those words, the grace, the absence of bitterness, it all came from Marcus. Claire could see it clearly now. He'd raised these children to be better than their circumstances. Better than her choices. Better than the resentment they had every right to feel. Marcus sat down across from her. What happened, Claire? After you gave birth, what happened? She took a shaky breath and told the story. The pregnancy. The fear. The isolation. The premature birth. The overwhelming panic when the nurse said triplets. The adoption papers she'd signed while still foggy from medication and terror. I convinced myself they'd have a better life with someone else. Someone who was ready. Someone who had money and stability. I never imagined you'd end up with them. The agency told me they couldn't find you. Marcus nodded slowly. They found me 3 months after you'd already signed the papers. But because I'm the biological father, I had rights. They contacted me, we did paternity testing, and I took custody. And you raised them alone. He smiled. I had help. Good friends. Good community. But yes, mostly alone. Claire looked at the 3 children who were watching this exchange like they were trying to understand a complicated puzzle. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you reach out and let me know you had them? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that cut through all of Claire's defenses. Because you made it clear you didn't want to be found. You moved. Changed your number. Disappeared. I figured if you wanted to know about your children, you'd find a way. You didn't. So I respected your choice and built a life without you. The next hour was one of the most difficult of Claire's life. She sat in that room with Marcus and the children and faced every choice she'd made. Every lie she'd told. Every shortcut she'd taken in pursuit of a life that looked successful from the outside. Marcus didn't lecture her. The children didn't accuse her. But the simple presence of their grace, their groundedness, their obvious love for each other, it was more convicting than any angry words could have been. They were proof that the life she'd thought Marcus couldn't provide, he provided beautifully. Not with money, although apparently he had plenty of that now. But with presence. With consistency. With love that showed up even when it was hard. Liam showed her his sketchbook. Drawings of their home. Their father making breakfast. Family trips to museums. His artistic talent was obvious, and Claire realized he'd gotten that from her. She used to draw when she was younger. Before she decided art wasn't practical. Before she focused entirely on climbing ladders and collecting status symbols. You're really talented, she told him. He smiled shyly. Dad got me lessons. He says art is how some people make sense of the world. She looked at Marcus. You encourage that? Even though it's not a practical career. Marcus shrugged. Who says it's not practical? Liam might be an artist. Or an architect. Or a designer. Or he might just be someone who sees beauty in the world and shares it with others. All of those are valuable. It was such a stark contrast to the way Claire had been raised. Everything in her childhood had been about practicality. About security. About money. Her mother had pushed her towards stable careers, stable relationships, stable everything. And look where that had gotten her. Sitting in a side room at her own wedding reception, which was currently falling apart in the next room, while her first husband demonstrated what real stability actually looked like. Ethan asked the question that had probably been on all their minds. Are you happy? In your life, before today, were you happy? Claire wanted to say yes. Wanted to defend her choices. But sitting there, looking at 3 children who'd been raised to value honesty, she couldn't lie. I thought I was. I had everything I thought I wanted. The house. The car. The successful husband. But something was always missing. I'd feel it late at night when I couldn't sleep. This emptiness that no amount of shopping or traveling or posting on social media could fill. She laughed bitterly. I thought the wedding would fill it. This big, perfect day where everyone could see how well I'd done. And instead, it showed me how hollow everything was. Emma spoke up. It's not too late, you know. To build something real. Claire looked at her with surprise. What do you mean? Emma glanced at her brothers, then at Marcus, then back to Claire. You can't undo the past. Can't change the choices you made. But you can change what you do now. You can choose to be honest. To be real. To stop measuring your worth by what other people think. 12 years old and speaking like a philosopher. Marcus had raised remarkable children. Claire felt the weight of missed years pressing down on her chest. I missed everything. Your first words. First steps. First days of school. Everything. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. You did. That's true. And those moments are gone. But that doesn't mean there can't be new moments. If you want them. If you're willing to do the work. Claire looked up sharply. You'd let me be part of their lives. After everything? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, that's not my decision alone. It's theirs. They're old enough to decide if they want a relationship with you. But I'll tell you this. If they choose to know you, you have to show up as your real self. Not the performance. Not the image. The real, flawed, honest person underneath. Because that's what family is. People who see your worst and choose to love you anyway. Marcus stood up. Kids, why don't you step outside for a minute? I need to talk to Claire privately. The triplets filed out, giving Claire encouraging looks as they left. When the door closed, Marcus sat back down. I'm going to be direct with you. Those children have been through enough uncertainty in their lives. They know they were given up. They've processed it in therapy. They've made peace with it because I gave them tools and support to do so. If you're going to be in their lives, you need to be consistent. Not popping in when it's convenient. Not disappearing when things get hard. Actually showing up. Can you do that? Claire felt the weight of the question. Could she? Her track record suggested not. She'd run when her marriage to Marcus got hard. Run when she found out she was pregnant. Run from every difficult thing in her life. I don't know, she admitted. I want to say yes. But I don't trust myself. What if I mess up again? Marcus nodded, appreciating the honesty. You probably will mess up. Everyone does. The question is, will you stay and fix it? Or will you run again? Claire thought about the past 7 years. The carefully constructed life that had just exploded. The lies that had seemed necessary but had only built a prison. The constant performance that had exhausted her. "I'm tired of running," she said quietly. "I'm tired of pretending. I don't even know who I am anymore under all the lies." "Then maybe this is your chance to find out," Marcus said. "Not as Jonathan's wife. Not as the successful woman with the perfect life. Just as Claire. Whoever that is." The simplicity of the statement made Claire want to cry. When was the last time she'd just been herself? Before Marcus, even. Had she ever? "I need help," she admitted. "I need therapy or something. I'm not equipped to be anyone's mother. I can barely manage my own life." Marcus pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed her the screen. It was the contact information for a therapist. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen. She helped me through the divorce and the early days of single parenthood. She's excellent. Call her." Claire took a photo of the contact with her phone. "Why are you helping me? I don't deserve this." Marcus stood up. "Because those kids deserve to know their mother if she's willing to be honest and present. And because I remember what it felt like when everyone gave up on me. When you gave up on me. Someone showing me grace during that time would have meant everything. So I'm showing you grace now. Not because you earned it. But because that's what decent people do." He walked to the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, Claire, I never hated you. I was hurt. Angry. Disappointed. But I never hated you. You taught me what I didn't want to become. And in a weird way, you gave me the greatest gifts of my life. So thank you for that." He left the room. Claire sat alone for several minutes, processing everything. Her wedding was ruined. Her marriage was over before it started. Her reputation in their social circle was destroyed. Everyone at that reception had seen her lies exposed. Her mother was probably mortified. Her friends were probably already gossiping. And somehow, despite all of that, Claire felt lighter than she had in years. Because the pretending was over. The exhausting performance had ended. She could stop now. Stop pretending to be someone she wasn't. Stop measuring her worth by external validation. Stop running from the parts of herself that were messy and complicated and real. She stood up, smoothed down her dress, and walked back out into the reception hall. It was mostly empty now. Most guests had left. The staff was starting to clean up. Jonathan was nowhere to be seen. Her mother was sitting at a table with her aunt, both of them looking shell-shocked. Claire walked over to them. "Mom, I'm sorry." Her mother looked up with tired eyes. "For which part? The lies? The spectacle? The complete implosion of your wedding?" Claire sat down. "All of it. I made a mess of everything because I was too proud to admit I'd made mistakes. I thought if I could just build a perfect-looking life, that would make up for the bad choices. But it doesn't work that way." Her mother sighed. "No, it doesn't. And now you have to deal with the consequences." Jonathan called his attorney. "He's filing for annulment. Your friends are already spreading the story all over social media. This is going to follow you for a long time." Claire nodded. She'd expected as much. "I know. But maybe that's what I need. Maybe I need to hit bottom before I can build something real." Her aunt, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "Those children. Marcus's children. Your children. They seem remarkable." Claire smiled through tears. "They are. They're everything I wasn't brave enough to be." The next few weeks were brutal. The annulment went through quickly. Turns out withholding the information that you'd been previously married and had children was grounds for an easy annulment. Jonathan wanted nothing to do with her. She'd moved out of his house with only her personal belongings. Stayed with her mother temporarily while she figured things out. The social media fallout was intense. Photos from the wedding, the moment Jonathan walked out, speculation about who Marcus was and who the children were. Claire deactivated all her accounts. She was done performing for an audience. She called Dr. Chen. Started therapy. It was uncomfortable and painful and necessary. They unpacked Claire's need for external validation. Her fear of being ordinary. Her tendency to run from difficulty. Dr. Chen didn't judge her. Just asked questions that made Claire think. What would happen if you stopped trying to impress people? What would your life look like if you measured success by internal peace instead of external markers? Who is Claire when she's not performing? Claire didn't have answers at first. But slowly, through weeks of therapy, she started to figure it out. She reached out to Marcus after a month. Asked if she could see the children again. He consulted with them first, then agreed. They met at a park. Neutral territory. The triplets were cautious but open. Claire didn't try to be anything other than honest. I don't know how to be a mother, she told them. I missed all the years when I could have learned. But I'd like to try to be someone in your lives. A friend maybe. Someone you can talk to. Someone who shows up. If you'll let me. They talked for 2 hours. About school. About hobbies. About Marcus and what it was like growing up with him as a dad. Claire listened more than she spoke. Learned about their lives. Their personalities. Their dreams. Emma wanted to be a doctor. She loved science and helping people. Ethan wanted to work in technology like Marcus. He was already coding his own apps. Liam wanted to study art and architecture. They were all brilliant in different ways. All grounded and kind and thoughtful. Claire asked them what they needed from her. Just honesty, Ethan said. Dad always told us the truth, even when it was hard. If you're going to be in our lives, we need that too. Claire promised. I can do that. It might be messy and I might make mistakes. But I won't lie to you. Not anymore. The visits became regular. Once a week at first. Then twice a week. Claire showed up consistently. Didn't try to buy their affection with gifts or treats. Just showed up and was present. Asked questions. Shared stories. Let them see the real her, including the flawed parts. She told them about growing up with pressure to be perfect. About marrying Marcus young and not being patient enough to let their life develop. About the fear that drove her to give them up. I thought you'd be better off without me, she admitted. And honestly, you probably were. Marcus gave you something I couldn't. Stability. Love. Consistency. But I'm grateful for the chance to know you now. Marcus watched from a distance. He'd stay at the park but give them space. Let Claire and the children build their own relationship without his interference. Sometimes Claire would catch him watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not possessive. Not worried. Maybe just protective. Making sure the children were okay. Making sure Claire was following through on her promises. After 3 months of consistent visits, Claire felt brave enough to ask him something she'd been wondering. Why did you really come to the wedding? The truth. They were sitting on a park bench while the kids played basketball nearby. Marcus thought for a long moment. Multiple reasons. The kids wanted to meet you and see where they came from. I wanted to give them that opportunity. But also, he paused, choosing his words carefully, I wanted to see if you were happy. Genuinely happy. If you'd found what you were looking for when you left me. And I could tell within 30 seconds of watching you walk down that aisle that you weren't. You looked beautiful. You looked successful. But you didn't look happy. And that made me sad for you. Claire felt tears sting her eyes. I came to that wedding thinking I'd won. That I'd made the right choice leaving you. That my life was better. And instead I realized I'd lost everything that mattered while chasing things that didn't. Marcus turned to look at her. It's not too late, you know. To build a life that matters. You're only 31. You have time to figure out who you want to be. She laughed wetly. That's almost exactly what Emma said. She's 12 and wiser than I am. Marcus smiled. She gets that from you actually. The wisdom is there. You just buried it under expectations and pressure. Maybe now you can let it out. 6 months after the wedding disaster, Claire's life looked completely different. She'd quit her high-pressure marketing job. Too much of it was about appearances and manipulating perceptions. She couldn't do that anymore. Instead, she took a position at a nonprofit that helped single mothers with resources and support. The pay was a fraction of what she'd been making. But the work felt meaningful. She was helping women who were in the position she'd been in, scared and alone and thinking they couldn't handle parenthood. She told them her story. About giving up her children. About the regret. About finding them again. I'm not saying you shouldn't consider adoption if that's right for you, she'd tell them. But I am saying make sure you're making the choice for the right reasons. Not out of fear. Not out of shame. But out of genuine belief that it's best for the child. Her relationship with the triplets deepened. They started calling her Claire, not Mom. She'd offered to let them call her Mom if they wanted, but Emma had gently explained. Dad is the one who did the mom stuff too. Staying up with us when we were sick. Braiding hair. Helping with homework. You're important to us, but Mom is more than biology. It's about who shows up. Claire understood. It stung a little, but she understood. She was building something new with them. Not mother-child, exactly, but not strangers either. Maybe more like a mentor. An adult they could trust. Someone who'd made mistakes but owned them. She started attending their school events. Recitals. Science fairs. Basketball games. Always checked with Marcus first to make sure it was okay. He was always gracious about it. You're part of their story, he'd say. You're welcome. Claire noticed that other parents would sometimes ask about their family dynamic. Is that their mother and father? She'd hear people whisper. Marcus would simply say, it's complicated but it works for us. He never threw her under the bus. Never explained to curious parents that she'd abandoned the children. He protected her reputation even when she didn't deserve it. One evening, after dropping the kids off at Marcus's house after dinner, he invited her in for coffee. They sat in his kitchen, a comfortable space that clearly saw a lot of family life. Photos of the kids on the walls. Their artwork on the fridge. Backpacks by the door. This was a home, not a showpiece. I want to thank you, Claire said. For giving me this chance. For not poisoning the kids against me. You could have. You would have had every right. Marcus poured the coffee. What would that have accomplished? Making them angry at you wouldn't have made them love me more. It just would have filled them with bitterness. I wanted them to have the option to know you and make their own decisions. Still. You're a better person than I am. Marcus shook his head. I'm just a person who's been broken and rebuilt. That process tends to remove your interest in revenge. When you've been down that low, you don't want to push anyone else down. You want to help pull people up. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Claire asked something she'd been wondering. Do you ever regret it? Taking custody of them? Raising them alone? Your life would have been easier if you'd let them be adopted by someone else. Marcus looked at her like she'd suggested the earth was flat. Regret them? Claire, they're the best thing that ever happened to me. Yes, it was hard. Incredibly hard. There were nights I cried from exhaustion. Days I wasn't sure how I'd make it work. But regret them? Never. Not for a single second. The conviction in his voice made Claire's chest ache. That's what she'd missed out on. Not just the children's lives, but the joy of being fully committed to something beyond herself. I envy you, she admitted. You found purpose. I'm still looking. You're working at a non-profit helping single mothers. You're showing up for 3 kids who didn't have to forgive you but did. You're doing the hard work of therapy and growth. That's purpose, Claire. It might not look like what you imagined, but it's real. She smiled. When did you become so wise? He laughed. Probably around the 3rd diaper blowout on the same day. Nothing makes you philosophical like being covered in baby excrement. They both laughed, and for the first time since the divorce, Claire felt like they might actually be okay. Not going back to what they were. But building something new. Co-parents, maybe. Or friends. Something healthy. A year after the wedding, Claire received an unexpected message. It was from Jonathan. She stared at his name on her phone screen for a long moment before opening it. Claire, I know we haven't spoken since everything happened. I've been doing a lot of thinking. A lot of therapy, actually. I'd like to meet for coffee if you're willing. No expectations. Just conversation. Let me know. She showed the message to Dr. Chen in their next session. What do you think? Should I meet with him? Dr. Chen turned the question back on her, as she always did. What do you want to do? And more importantly, why? Claire thought about it. Part of me is curious. Part of me feels guilty. I did lie to him. I did blow up our wedding. Maybe I owe him closure. Dr. Chen nodded. And what would closure look like for you? Claire realized she didn't know. I guess just the chance to apologize properly. To hear what he needs to say. To close that chapter completely. She sent Jonathan a reply. They agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop, neutral territory, the following Saturday. When Claire arrived, Jonathan was already there. He looked different. Less polished somehow. He'd grown a beard. His clothes were casual, not the designer suits she was used to seeing him in. He stood when she approached, and they shared an awkward moment of not knowing whether to hug or shake hands. They settled on a brief, stiff hug. Thanks for meeting me, he said as they sat down. I wasn't sure you would. Claire ordered tea. I figured we should talk. Clear the air. I owe you an apology. Jonathan held up a hand. Actually, can I go first? Claire nodded. He took a breath. I've been in therapy since our wedding day. Working through a lot of things. And I've realized that our relationship, while it felt real to me, was built on a foundation I didn't fully understand. You presented yourself as one thing, and I accepted that without asking deeper questions. I didn't ask about your past. Didn't ask about your family history. Didn't ask the hard questions that people should ask before marriage. I was attracted to the image you projected. Successful. Beautiful. Put together. I didn't look underneath that. Claire was surprised. She'd expected anger. Blame. This sounded almost like shared responsibility. That doesn't excuse what I did. I lied to you. I hid my entire past. I invited my ex-husband to our wedding to humiliate him and it backfired spectacularly. That's on me, Jonathan. He nodded. It is. And it hurt. It humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. But in the months since, I've realized something. If we'd gone through with that marriage, we both would have been miserable. Because neither of us was being authentic. I was playing the role of the successful businessman with the trophy wife. You were playing the role of the perfect partner who'd overcome her modest beginnings. We were performing for each other. The insight surprised Claire. You're right. I didn't even realize I was doing it until everything fell apart. Jonathan sipped his coffee. I saw the photos, you know. On social media before you deleted everything. Photos of you with those kids. Your kids. And the thing that struck me wasn't anger. It was that you looked more real in those candid shots than you ever looked in all our carefully curated couple photos. Like you'd finally stopped performing. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. I didn't have a choice anymore. Everything I'd built was exposed as fake. I had to start over being honest. How's that going? Jonathan asked, and he sounded genuinely curious. Claire told him about the nonprofit job. About the regular visits with the triplets. About therapy. About slowly building a life that felt authentic instead of impressive. It's harder, she admitted. I make way less money. My social circle is gone. People still gossip about me. But I sleep better at night. I look at myself in the mirror and recognize the person looking back. Jonathan smiled. That sounds like success to me. Real success, not the fake version we were both chasing. They talked for over an hour. About what had driven them both to construct false versions of themselves. About the pressure to appear successful. About how exhausting it is to maintain an image. Jonathan told her he'd stepped back from some of his businesses. I was working 80 hours a week trying to build an empire. For what? To impress people I didn't even like. I've scaled back. Focusing on what actually matters. He'd started volunteering with an organization that taught business skills to underprivileged youth. Turns out helping a kid learn to code or balance a budget is more satisfying than closing another dealership deal. When they parted ways, they hugged again. This time it was genuine. I hope you find what you're looking for, Claire told him. He smiled. I think I already am. And I hope you continue building something real. You're braver than you think, Claire. It takes courage to admit you were wrong and start over. As Claire drove home, she thought about how much had changed in a year. She'd lost a marriage, a social circle, a carefully constructed identity. But she'd gained something more valuable. Honesty. Connection. Purpose. The respect of 3 remarkable children who were teaching her what real success looked like. It was Emma who asked the question that changed everything. They were at dinner, all 5 of them. Marcus had started inviting Claire to family dinners once a month. It was still a little awkward, but it was getting easier. They were eating tacos, the kitchen was messy with toppings and dishes, and Liam was telling a story about an art project gone wrong at school. Everyone was laughing. And Emma, who'd been quiet through most of the meal, suddenly asked, "Dad, do you think you'll ever get married again?" The question hung in the air. Marcus looked surprised. I haven't really thought about it. Why do you ask? Emma shrugged. I don't know. You've been alone for a long time. Don't you want a partner? Ethan jumped in. He's not alone. He has us. Emma rolled her eyes. That's not the same and you know it. I mean like a wife. Someone to share life with. Marcus glanced at Claire, who was suddenly very interested in her taco. I've been focused on raising you 3. That's been my priority. Maybe someday, when you're older. But Liam, perceptive as always, had noticed the glance between Marcus and Claire. Do you still have feelings for each other? The directness of the question made both adults freeze. Claire felt her face heat up. Marcus cleared his throat. That's complicated, buddy. Liam tilted his head. Complicated how? You either do or you don't. Emma leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Wait. Do you? Claire opened her mouth, not sure what she was going to say. Marcus spoke first. Your biological mother and I have a complicated history. We're building a good co-parenting relationship. That's what matters right now. But the kids weren't buying it. Ethan, the analytical one, laid it out. You're both single. You spend time together regularly. You clearly respect each other. You have us in common. Why wouldn't you consider getting back together? Marcus set down his taco. Because the reasons we divorced are still real. We wanted different things. We had different values. People don't just change because time passes. Claire surprised herself by speaking up. But people do change. I've changed. Completely. The person I am now is not who I was 7 years ago. Everyone looked at her. She hadn't meant to say that out loud, but now that she had, she kept going. I'm not saying we should get back together. That's not my decision alone, and there's a lot of hurt in our past. But Marcus, you've changed too. You've become this incredible father. This successful businessman. This person who leads with grace. Neither of us is who we were when we were married. Marcus studied her face. What are you saying, Claire? She took a breath. I'm saying that maybe we shouldn't close doors that might be worth exploring. Not now. Not rushed. But someday. Maybe. The children exchanged glances. This was clearly the most exciting development in their lives in a while. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Kids, can you give us a few minutes alone?" They groaned but complied, heading upstairs to Ethan's room. When they were alone, Marcus and Claire sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Marcus spoke. I need to be honest with you. I'm not the same man you married. I don't need someone to complete me. I don't need rescue or fixing. I've built a whole life. The question isn't whether I could fit you into it. The question is whether we could build something new together. Something healthy. Claire nodded. I understand. And I need you to know I'm not the same woman either. I don't need financial security or social status. I don't need you to prove anything to me. I've learned that the external stuff doesn't matter. What matters is character. Consistency. Kindness. And you've demonstrated all of those things, even to someone who hurt you deeply. Marcus leaned back in his chair. So what are we talking about here? Starting over? Dating? Trying again? Claire smiled slightly. I don't know. Maybe just being open to the possibility. No pressure. No timeline. Just seeing where honesty and time take us. Marcus considered this. I'd need to be careful. For the kids. They're finally stable. Finally secure. I can't introduce uncertainty into their lives just because two adults have unresolved feelings. Claire agreed immediately. Absolutely. They come first. Always. If we explored this, it would have to be slowly. Carefully. With their input. Marcus smiled. They clearly have opinions. Claire laughed. Emma's been plotting this, I think. They sat quietly for a moment, the possibility hanging between them like something fragile and precious. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Claire nodded. Do you still think about that night? When you told me you wanted a divorce? Claire's smile faded. All the time. It's one of my biggest regrets. Not because the divorce was wrong, we were both struggling. But because of how I did it. The contempt. The coldness. The way I made you feel like you were the problem when really I was running from myself. Marcus nodded slowly. I think about it too. Not with anger anymore. But I remember feeling like I'd failed you. Like I wasn't enough. You were always enough, Claire said firmly. I was the one who wasn't ready. Who wasn't mature enough to see what I had. You were working hard. Building something. Being patient. All the things I should have valued but didn't. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time they'd touched with intention in 7 years. Maybe we both needed to grow separately before we could come back together. If this is even what's happening. I'm still not sure. Claire squeezed his hand. Neither am I. But I'm open to finding out. They didn't rush into anything. Both of them had learned the cost of impulsive decisions. Instead, they took it slow. Started with longer conversations after family dinners. Then coffee meetings without the kids. Then actual dates. The first official date was awkward. They went to a restaurant, dressed up, and immediately felt like they were performing again. Halfway through dinner, Marcus said, "This feels weird." Claire laughed with relief. So weird. Like we're pretending to be strangers getting to know each other when we have 3 children together. They left the restaurant and went to a park instead. Sat on a bench and just talked. About everything. About the past. About their individual journeys. About what they'd learned. About what they wanted now. Marcus told her about the dark days after the divorce. "I thought I'd never be happy again. Thought I'd messed up my one chance at family. And then the call came about the babies and it was like the universe was saying, here's your purpose. Don't waste it." Claire told him about the years of pretending. Every photo I posted, every party I attended, every time I told someone how happy I was lying. I was empty. I think part of me invited you to the wedding hoping you'd stop me. Hoping someone would call out the charade. Why didn't you just call it off yourself? Marcus asked. Claire thought about it. Pride. Fear. Momentum. I'd told everyone I was marrying this successful man. Moving into this beautiful house. Starting this perfect life. How could I admit it was all wrong? So I kept going, hoping the feeling of wrongness would fade. It never did. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. We're both pretty messed up, huh? Claire leaned into him. Completely. But at least now we're honest about it. The children watched their relationship develop with interest and occasional interference. Emma kept suggesting romantic gestures. Dad, you should buy her flowers. Ethan kept asking logical questions. Have you discussed your long-term goals? Your financial plans? Your parenting philosophies? Liam just drew pictures of the 5 of them together and left them around the house. Marcus and Claire agreed to keep things undefined for a while. They were dating, sort of. But they weren't committed. Weren't making promises. Just spending time together and seeing what developed. Claire's mother had opinions, of course. Are you seriously considering getting back together with Marcus? After everything? Claire met her mother for lunch one Saturday. After everything, yes. Because everything includes him raising 3 children alone while I was building a fake life. Everything includes him showing me grace I didn't deserve. Everything includes us both growing into better people. Her mother shook her head. What about Jonathan? What about the life you could have had? Claire spoke firmly. The life I could have had with Jonathan was built on lies. I would have been miserable. I am choosing authenticity over comfort. I'm choosing real connection over impressive appearances. I'm choosing Marcus because he's a good man who makes me want to be a better person. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said something surprising. You know, I always liked Marcus. I thought you were making a mistake when you left him. But you were so determined and I didn't want to push you away by disagreeing. Claire stared at her mother. You never told me that. Her mother sighed. I know. I thought I was supporting you by supporting your choices. But sometimes real support means telling someone they're wrong. I should have done that. Should have told you that money isn't everything. That patience is a virtue. That running away doesn't solve problems. It was the closest thing to an apology Claire had ever received from her mother. She reached across the table and squeezed her hand. We both made mistakes. But we're learning. 6 months into their renewed relationship, Marcus and Claire had their first real disagreement. It was about parenting. Ethan had gotten in trouble at school for arguing with a teacher about a grade he thought was unfair. Claire thought the school was being too harsh. Marcus thought Ethan needed to learn that how you disagree matters as much as what you disagree about. They argued about it after the kids went to bed. Voices raised. Old patterns emerging. Claire felt herself wanting to run. To shut down. To leave before things got worse. But she forced herself to stay. To work through it. This is what we did before, Marcus said, frustration evident. We disagreed and instead of working through it, we let resentment build. Claire took a breath. You're right. I feel myself wanting to leave. To avoid conflict. But I'm not going to. I'm going to stay and we're going to figure this out. They talked for 2 more hours. Listened to each other. Found compromise. Agreed to present a united front to Ethan while privately acknowledging both perspectives had merit. When they finally resolved it, they were both exhausted. But they'd done something they'd never managed before. They'd fought and stayed. 2 years after the wedding disaster, Marcus asked Claire to marry him. Not in a restaurant with a violinist. Not with a 6-carat ring and 500 witnesses. He asked her in his kitchen on a random Tuesday evening. They'd just finished cleaning up from dinner. The kids were doing homework upstairs. Marcus was drying dishes while Claire washed. And he just said, I think we should get married. Claire dropped the plate she was holding. It shattered in the sink. What? Marcus turned to face her. I've been thinking about it for months. We're good together. We've worked through hard stuff. We co-parent well. The kids are happy. I love you. Not the version of you I married before, but the real you. The honest, flawed, growing version. And I think you love me too. Claire's hands were shaking. That's not a proposal. That's a statement of intent. Marcus smiled. You're right. He got down on one knee right there in the kitchen, dish towel still in his hand. Claire Anderson, will you marry me? Again. For real this time. Claire laughed and cried at the same time. You don't have a ring. He shrugged. We can pick one out together. Or not have one at all. I don't care about symbols. I care about commitment. Claire pulled him up off the floor and kissed him. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Again. For real this time. The kids heard the commotion and came running downstairs. When they saw their parents kissing in the kitchen, Emma screamed. Finally. I've been waiting 2 years for this. Ethan grinned. Does this mean we're a normal family now? Liam just hugged both of them. I'm going to draw this moment. They stood in the kitchen, all 5 of them, and Claire felt something she'd never felt before. Complete. Not because a man completed her. But because she'd finally become whole enough to be part of something bigger than herself. They planned a small wedding. 20 people in Marcus's backyard. No designer dress, just a simple white sundress Claire bought off the rack. No 5-tier cake, just cupcakes the kids helped bake. No orchestra, just a playlist of their favorite songs. Claire's mother was there. Tyler was there. Dr. Chen was there. The children stood with them as they exchanged vows. Real vows this time. Not promises about forever, but commitments about today. I promise to show up, Claire said. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I promise to be honest. To choose growth over comfort. To love you and these children with my whole, imperfect heart. Marcus's vows were simple. I promise to remember that grace is stronger than bitterness. That patience builds more than rush. That we are all becoming, always. I promise to choose us every day. To work through hard things. To celebrate small moments. To build a life that's real instead of impressive. There was no objection moment in the ceremony because everyone there wanted them together. When the officiant pronounced them married, the kids cheered louder than anyone. Emma was crying happy tears. Ethan was grinning. Liam was already sketching the scene in his ever-present notebook. At the reception, which was really just a barbecue in the backyard, Claire found herself talking to Tyler. "Thank you," she told him. "For being there for Marcus when I wasn't. For helping him raise the kids. For being a good friend." Tyler smiled. "He's my brother in all the ways that matter. But I'm glad he has you now. You're different than before." Claire nodded. "I am. I had to break completely before I could rebuild into someone worth knowing." Tyler raised his glass. To breaking and rebuilding. The only way real change happens. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the kids were in bed, Marcus and Claire sat on their back porch. "Did you ever imagine this?" Claire asked. "When I handed you divorce papers 7 years ago, did you imagine we'd end up here?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "No. I imagined a lot of things. Imagined growing old alone. Imagined the kids asking why their parents couldn't make it work. Imagined being bitter. But I didn't imagine this. Us. Together. Healthy. Real." Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad we took the long way here. I don't think we could have built something real without breaking first." 3 years after remarrying, Claire and Marcus were invited to speak at a conference for divorced parents. The topic was co-parenting and blended families. They almost declined. Public speaking wasn't their thing. But the organizers were persistent. "Your story could help people," they said. So Claire and Marcus agreed. They stood on a stage in front of 300 people and told their story. The whole thing. The divorce. The pregnancy. The adoption. The custody. The wedding disaster. The slow rebuilding. The remarriage. Claire spoke about the cost of pride. "I spent years building an image instead of a life. And when that image shattered, I thought I'd lost everything. But actually, I just lost the fake stuff. The real stuff was still there, waiting for me to be brave enough to claim it." Marcus spoke about Grace. "I could have been bitter. Could have turned the kids against their mother. Could have refused to let her back in our lives. But bitterness would have poisoned us all. Grace freed us. Freed me from anger. Freed her from shame. Freed the kids from having to choose sides." During the Q&A, someone asked, "Do you think everyone should give their ex another chance?" Marcus and Claire looked at each other. Claire answered. "No. Not every relationship should be resurrected. Some relationships end for good reasons and should stay ended. What worked for us was that we both did significant individual work before we came back together. I went to therapy. Worked on my issues. Learned who I was outside of performance and pretending. Marcus did the same. We became better people separately before we could be good together." Another person asked, "What about the children? Was it confusing for them?" The kids were in the audience. They'd been asked if they wanted to be there and had all said yes. Emma stood up to answer. "At first, yeah. It was weird. Like, is she our mom? Just Claire. A friend? But our dad helped us process it. We talked about it a lot. And eventually we figured it out. Family isn't just biology. It's not just who raises you. It's who shows up. Who chooses you. Claire shows up now. So she's family." The audience applauded. Claire wiped tears from her eyes. After the conference, several people approached them. Single mothers thanking Claire for being honest about giving up her children. Divorced fathers thanking Marcus for modeling grace. Stepparents asking advice about blended families. One woman in particular stood out. She was young, probably mid-20s, visibly pregnant. "I'm thinking about adoption," she told Claire. "I'm scared. I don't think I can do this alone. But I don't want to regret it later like you did." Claire took her hands. "I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I will say this. If you choose adoption, make sure it's what you truly want. Not what you think you should do. Not what seems easiest. What you actually want in your heart. And if you choose to parent, know that there are resources. People who will help. It's hard, but it's possible." The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "What if I make the wrong choice?" Claire squeezed her hands. "Then you make the wrong choice and you learn from it and you forgive yourself and you move forward. We all make wrong choices. The question isn't whether you'll mess up. The question is whether you'll let that mistake define you forever or whether you'll grow from it." The woman thanked her and walked away. Marcus put his arm around Claire. "You're good at this. At being honest about hard things." Claire leaned into him. "I had a good teacher. You showed me that honesty is kinder than pretending." For Emma's 16th birthday, she asked for something unusual. She wanted to write an essay about her family for a school project about identity. She asked if she could interview both Marcus and Claire. They agreed. She set up her phone to record and asked them questions she'd prepared. "Dad, what was it like when you found out about us?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "Terrifying. Exhilarating. Like someone handed me the most precious, fragile things in the world and said, 'Don't drop them.' I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I had to try." "Claire, why did you give us up?" Emma asked. Claire had known this question would come eventually. "I was scared. I felt alone. I thought I couldn't be a good mother because I was still figuring out who I was as a person. And honestly, I thought you'd be better off without me. I was wrong about that. You would have been fine either way because your dad is incredible. But I missed out on knowing you, and that's something I have to live with." Emma nodded, writing notes. "Do you regret it?" Claire met her eyes. "Every day. But I'm grateful I get to know you now. Even if it's not in the traditional mother role." "What do you want me to know about your relationship?" Emma asked. Marcus and Claire looked at each other. Claire spoke first. "That love isn't always enough. We loved each other the first time we were married, but we weren't ready for each other. We had to grow separately before we could grow together. And that real relationships require work. They require honesty and patience and the willingness to stay even when it's uncomfortable." Marcus added, "And that people can change. We're not who we were 15 years ago. We've both worked hard to become better versions of ourselves. That work never stops." Emma finished her essay and shared it with them before turning it in. She'd titled it, "The Long Way Home." In it, she wrote about identity not being simple. About how she was the daughter of two parents who'd both failed and both succeeded. About how family was about choice as much as biology. About how her childhood, while unconventional, had taught her that grace matters more than perfection. Her teacher gave her an A and asked if she'd read it to the class. Emma did. Several of her classmates came up to her afterward. "Your family sounds cool," one girl said. "Like, messy but real." Emma smiled. "Yeah. That's exactly what we are." Ethan's perspective was different. He was the logical one, the one who needed things to make sense. At 17, he sat Marcus down for a serious conversation. "Dad, I want to understand the financial stuff. How did you go from barely making it to successful? What changed?" Marcus appreciated the directness. He pulled out a whiteboard and walked Ethan through it. The initial struggle. The freelance work. The partnership with David. The equity that grew. The investments he'd made carefully over time. The key, Marcus explained, was that I never spent money to impress people. I lived below my means. Saved aggressively. Invested wisely. And when opportunities came, I was ready. Ethan absorbed it all. So when Claire left you because you were poor, you were actually on the path to wealth. She just didn't see it. Marcus nodded. She measured success by immediate results. I was thinking long-term. Neither approach is wrong, necessarily. But they were incompatible at the time. Ethan frowned. How do you not resent her for that? For not believing in you? Marcus considered the question. I did resent her. For a while. But resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only hurts you. I chose to let it go. Chose to focus on building something good instead of dwelling on something bad. Liam's approach was, predictably, artistic. For his senior year art show, he created a series of paintings titled, Broken Things Made Beautiful. Each painting showed something shattered being put back together, but the cracks were filled with gold. Kintsugi style. The final painting in the series was a family portrait. Marcus, Claire, and the three of them. But the figures were all cracked and gold-filled. The artist's statement read, "This is my family. We're all broken in different ways. But we chose to fill the cracks with something beautiful instead of pretending they weren't there. The cracks are part of our story. They don't make us less. They make us real." Claire stood in front of that painting at the art show and cried. Not sad tears. Grateful tears. This child, the one she'd given up, had turned their family's brokenness into art. Had found meaning in their story. Had chosen to see beauty in imperfection. She found Liam in the crowd. "Thank you," she told him. "For seeing us this way." He smiled. "It's how you taught me to see things. By being honest about the cracks." The triplets graduated high school together, valedictorians all three. Their speeches were different but connected. Emma spoke about resilience. "My family taught me that falling doesn't define you. Getting up does. My parents both fell. Both made mistakes. But they got up. They did the work. They showed me that you can recover from anything if you're willing to be honest and put in the effort." Ethan spoke about patience. "My father taught me that success isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. He built something real by being patient. By doing the work even when nobody was watching. By believing that good things come to those who persist." Liam spoke about grace. "My parents taught me that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's strength. They forgave each other for past hurts. They gave each other chances they didn't have to give. And that grace created space for all of us to be imperfect and still loved." The three speeches together told the complete story of their family. Resilience. Patience. Grace. The audience, filled with families of all configurations, gave them a standing ovation. Claire and Marcus sat together, holding hands, watching their children claim a future they'd built together. That night, at the graduation party, Tyler pulled Marcus aside. "You did it, man. You raised three incredible humans. I'm proud of you." Marcus smiled. "We did it. You, me, Claire, Dr. Chen, everyone who showed up and helped. It takes a village." Tyler nodded. "Yeah, but you were the constant. You never quit. That matters." Marcus looked across the yard where Claire was laughing with the kids. "I had a lot of reasons not to quit. Best reasons in the world." Claire found herself alone with her mother for a moment. "I was wrong," her mother said abruptly. "About Marcus. About what matters. About success. I pushed you toward money and status because I thought that would make you happy. I'm sorry. Claire hugged her mother. You did your best with what you knew. We all did. And look how it turned out. We're okay. Better than okay. Her mother pulled back, studying her face. You look happy. Really happy. Not the performed happiness from before. Real happiness. Claire smiled. Because it is real. All of it. The good and the bad and the complicated. It's all real. As the party wound down and the kids said goodbye to their friends, Claire and Marcus found themselves alone on the back porch again. The same spot where they'd sat after their small wedding. The same spot where they'd had countless conversations over the years. Do you remember the invitation? Claire asked. To my wedding to Jonathan. Marcus nodded. Hard to forget. It changed everything. Claire laughed. I sent it thinking I'd win some kind of imaginary competition. Thinking I'd prove I'd made the right choice leaving you. And instead, I destroyed my fake life and got a chance at a real one. Marcus pulled her close. Best worst decision you ever made. She leaned into him. You know what I realized? That wedding, that disaster, that humiliation, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. It broke me open. Forced me to be honest. Gave me a chance to know my children. Gave us a chance to build something real. If it had gone smoothly, if I'd married Jonathan and lived that lie, I'd probably still be miserable and not even know why. Marcus kissed the top of her head. The universe has a weird sense of humor sometimes. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. After a while, Claire said, I want to do something. I want to start a support group for women who are considering placing their children for adoption or who have placed children and are dealing with the aftermath. I want to help them process it in a healthy way. Give them resources. Let them know they're not alone. Marcus smiled. That sounds perfect. You'd be good at that. Claire continued, and maybe another group for divorced parents trying to co-parent. We figured it out, mostly. Maybe we can help others figure it out too. Marcus nodded. I'm in. Whatever you need. That was their life now. Not perfect. Not impressive. Just real. Working jobs they found meaningful. Raising kids they loved. Building community. Helping others. Living honestly. The Rolls-Royce from that wedding day had been returned long ago. Marcus still drove a modest car. Claire still lived simply. They'd learned that real wealth isn't measured in possessions. It's measured in connection. In purpose. In the ability to look in the mirror and recognize yourself. So let me ask you this. What would you have done in Marcus's position? When the woman who left you shows up in your life again, broken and humiliated, do you show grace or do you walk away? And what would you have done in Claire's position? When you've built a life on lies and it all comes crashing down, do you have the courage to start over honestly? These aren't easy questions. There are no simple answers. But here's what I know after telling you this story. Pride costs more than humility ever will. The life that looks impressive on the outside isn't always the life that feels good on the inside. And sometimes the long way is the only way to get where you're supposed to be. Marcus and Claire took the longest possible route to building a family. They failed first. They broke first. They had to become completely different people before they could come back together. But maybe that's the point. Maybe some things have to fall apart so they can come back together stronger. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own choices, your own pride, your own definition of success, then it did what it was supposed to do. Drop a comment and tell us what part of this story resonated most with you. Was it Marcus's patience? Claire's transformation? The children's grace? Was it the moment at the wedding when everything fell apart? Or the quiet moment on the back porch when everything came together? We want to hear from you. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Because we tell stories that matter. Stories about real people facing real choices. Stories that remind us that we're all just trying to figure it out as we go. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe someone who's going through a divorce. Maybe someone who's struggling with a choice about their children. Maybe someone who's built a life that looks good but feels empty. Maybe someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to start over honestly. This story isn't just about Marcus and Claire. It's about all of us. About the masks we wear. About the prices we pay for pretending. About the courage it takes to be real. And here's the final thing I want you to take away from this. The triplets, Emma, Ethan, and Liam, they didn't ask to be born into this complicated situation. They didn't choose to have a mother who gave them up or a father who had to raise them alone. But they became remarkable humans anyway. Because they were loved consistently. Because they were told the truth. Because they were shown that imperfection is human and grace is powerful. If you're a parent watching this, that's your legacy. Not the money you leave behind. Not the house or the car or the status. But the values you model. The consistency you demonstrate. The grace you extend. Thank you for staying with this story from beginning to end. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for caring about stories that dig beneath the surface and remind us what really matters. If you got value from this, hit that like button. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe so you never miss our next story. Because we're just getting started. There are so many more stories to tell. Stories about redemption. About second chances. About the quiet courage it takes to live honestly in a world that rewards performance. Until next time, remember this. The most impressive life isn't the one that looks perfect from the outside. It's the one that feels authentic from the inside. It's not about having everything. It's about being real with what you have. It's not about never falling. It's about getting back up with more wisdom than you had before. Marcus and Claire's story reminds us that the long way home is sometimes the only way to arrive at a place worth staying. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And remember that your story isn't over yet. No matter what you've done. No matter what mistakes you've made. No matter how broken things seem right now. You can still choose grace. You can still choose growth. You can still choose to start over honestly. The best chapter of your life might be the one you haven't written yet. We'll see you in the next video.